Very good morning, Madam Roy, the chairperson of this session. And I thank you, IDSA, very much for inviting me in this conference of a very important topic, even though, the invitation was very 11th hour. So I thank you. And my topic, today is focus on Nepal's energy challenges, energy issues, for regional cooperation. So the topic is energy security issues, challenges, and transitioning to cleaner energy in Nepal. So the main agenda is, I took it, three main agenda. That's electricity generation and supply situation, supply capacity, the fossil fuel import and use of Nepal, and the modern fuel for cooking, and that is electricity. So there are many, energy carriers for modern fuel, but we think electricity is have the most priority. So if you see in the international arena, and if you see in Southeast Asia, as per International Energy Agency's data, if you see the per capita electricity consumption in 2015, in Southeast Asia, Nepal is at the very nadir. So we have only around 140 kilowatt hour per capita, whereas India, it was around 900. Now I think it is crossing over 1,000 kilowatt hour per capita. So if the Asian average is around 1,000 kilowatt hour. So it shows that, the electricity consumption is so low in Nepal, even though we have huge resources, potential of hydropower. So let's just see the energy consumption pattern in Nepal in 2070s. The energy mix is, of course, heavily dependent on biomass, solid biomass, around 72%, and modern energy like petroleum fuel 14%, electricity 3%, coal 7%, and modern renewable energy, that means solar, microhydro is around 4%. So the energy consumption in economic sectors, mostly I think is residential. Around 75% of primary energy goes for meeting the energy demand in household sectors. Whereas in the productive sector, it is around industrial 10%, transportation 10%, commercial 4%, and agriculture very, very insignificant, just 1% only. So the total energy demand in 2017 was around 544 petajoule. So I think it's 1 petajoule is around 23,900 tons of oil equivalent. So let's see, and we just heard from our fellow colleagues in the speakers that energy should not be a strategic commodity. It should be a commercial commodity. When big nations in the region thinks energy as a strategic commodity, then there are hitches in the sustainable energy development in the region. And mostly the smaller nations suffer a lot. So some of my presentation, I show you there. So the petroleum products in Nepal is increasing at a tremendous rate. So in a decade from 2007 to 2017, the compound annual growth rate was 11% average annually. So if you see in these slides, if you see 2007 to 2017, it is 11%. If you see 2 years, 2015 and 17, it is 16%. And if you see the current one, 2017 to 2018, it is 21% in physical term. If it is in monetary term, the increase is around 40% higher than last year. Around 151 billions of rupees we spent in importing fossil fuels, especially petroleum products from India. And one of the facts I saw in the lower bottom in the right hand is the consumption of liquefied petroleum gas. So the growth rate is around 17% per annum. That means about 5 years, it doubles. So it's a huge growth, whereas our economy is growing at a very, very around 4 to 5% per year. So consumption of petroleum products, which we do not have a drop in the country, is at a tremendous rate. So this is one of the biggest challenges which Nepal is facing currently. If you see in this picture, this is the ratio of petroleum import against our commodity export. If you see in 2004, it is just 24% of our exports were consumed for importing, were used for, expended for importing petroleum products. Whereas now in 2018, it is 181%. That's our 200% is increasing. So you see, this is a huge growth in the import trends of petroleum products in the country. So we see, it's in 2007, UN did a survey of oil price vulnerability among 24 Asia and Pacific nations. Nepal is in the most vulnerable country if there is any change in the price in the international oil market. So we will one of the suffering country in the world. So we understand that after the devastating earthquake in 2015, there was a trade debacle we faced, and Nepal faced the biggest energy crisis. I want to tell you that every 2 decades, Nepal is facing a energy supply crisis. So there is a question, I think. The crisis raised the question, how are non-traditional security challenges created? Is security challenges created by traditional security issues? So this is one of the big questions among the Nepalese in their perception. So this makes this kind of growth in the petroleum products, fossil fuels, put among the nation and researchers in the country which path to take for future sustainable energy development and energy security. A pathway that provides security of supply, that is cost effective, and that is environmentally sustainable. So these are the 3 main points that needed to be considered in the development of energy in the country. So there are very positive signs efforts taken by Nepal government. For the past couple of years, the power subsector is moving in a positive direction. Emphasis has been given to the development and expansion of hydroelectricity and all types of renewable energy to provide clean energy to Nepalese households. So in 2018 and 2028 has been declared as the energy decade, so that the emphasis on sustainable energy development. So in the same way, recently in the initial months of 2018, Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation came out with a white paper that focuses on supply side and electrification of residential sector with campaigns such as One House, One Energy House, One House, One Electric Cook Stove. So these campaigns need concrete steps for implementation because electrification is a system solution. So both demand side must be considered along with supply solutions. So concentrating on the supply side will not only be sufficient. So we have to consider demand side, creating demand, developing demand in the country as well. The Paris Accord 2015, one of the resolution shows that it discourages use of fossil fuels and there needs to be a rapid promotion of renewable sources for meeting energy demand in the concerned countries. So I think we have to see in Nepal's case, are we moving towards green economy or brown economy? Because the consumption pattern of fossil fuels are increasing at a tremendous rate. So let's see, some of the very anomaly between Nepal and India's, tax structure. So, if you see in petrol, the tax structure in Nepal is only 37%, whereas in India is 52% in petrol. Whereas diesel is 24% in Nepal, it is in 45%. And kerosene, LPG, everywhere the tax structure is quite higher in India rather than in Nepal, because from Paris Accord 2015, this discourage of sales of fossil fuels are all those reasons, because the prices in the international market, in oil international market, the prices decline, but India increases the excise duties. Tremendously excise duties were, for diesel, it was more than 5 times. In petrol, it is 2.5 times. This tax structure were increased, whereas in Nepal's case, nothing was being done. So it remains the standstill. And because of that, there is an anomaly in the border prices of petroleum products. If you see currently, yesterday's price, so Nepal, I mean, this is in Nepali currency, so I mean, 1 Indian rupees is 1.60 Nepali rupees. So petrol is being sold at 110 rupees in Nepali currency, whereas India, it is 121. So there is, Nepal's petrol is cheaper across the board. 11 rupees, that's more than 10%. Couple of weeks ago, it was 20%. So diesel is 97.50, whereas in India, it is 112 rupees. So around 15% differences. So because of that, we have an open border with India. So because of that, 10 to 12% of diesel, which import from India, going back to India again. So this is how it is happening because of the disparity in cross-border prices of the petroleum products. So one issue which I want to put before you is in an urban household in Nepal. So if we start cooking on kerosene, if we start cooking on LPG, if we start cooking on electric hot plates, now there is a electric induction cooktops are there. So if you compare in the two decades, in 2000, the most expensive was cooking on electricity. Now in 2018, what happened because of the rises in prices of petroleum products, international market? So it has become cheaper to cook on electricity. So it is around 40% cheaper to cook on electricity, right? So I think, Thierry has done some of the very studies in Himachal Pradesh. So, there is how the cooktops, electric induction cooktops can substitute LPG cooking stoves. So cooking, in Nepal's case, accounts for 60% of consumption of primary energy supply. So LPG sales is growing now. Instead of electricity, Nepal's, is LPG sales is growing by 21% annually. And the country is doling out 400 rupees as a subsidy in each cylinder. So that means around 30% subsidy on LPG. So around 10 billion of rupees has been doled out as subsidy. I think, because of the rise in import of LPG, it may go around 13 billion if the current subsidy continues. So with that money, with this subsidy money, we can install around 60 megawatt of hydropower plant every year. So, this is what one of the question is. Because we understand electric cooktops has become almost 50% technically efficient, around 40% economically efficient rather than LPG. So, but there is some hitches, there is some challenges. So government Nepal should take proactive actions because Nepal's utility, that's Nepal Electricity Authority, sales is around for 50% for domestic or household sector. But almost 80% of them cannot cook on electricity because they have very low ampere connection of 5 ampere. For a cooktop, electricity require more than 15 ampere. So upgrading the connection is technically feasible and can also be substantially increase the utilities revenue generation. So this is some of the challenges in the country which we are facing, even though we have huge resources of hydropower. So on this basis, we see the problems in the imports of fossil fuels in the country, taking a tremendous rate of growth. And for sustainability development, we took, based on the low carbon economic development strategy, Nepal's intended nationally determined contribution, sustainable energy for all, and sustainable development goals. In all these things, Nepal is also an endorsee. So what we think, we did a modeling on long-range energy alternative planning system modeling framework and projected. So what will happen? If you take a sustainable energy development scenario, we require by 2030 around 15,000 megawatt. So that's the requirement. The current one is 1,000 megawatt. And we import 400 megawatt from India every year. So if you want to develop sustainably in the energy sector, we require a power of 15,000 megawatt by 2030. And this is very commensurate with the government's plans and program. They are thinking to develop 15,000 megawatt by 2030 so that per capita electricity consumption in Nepal goes to 1,500 kilowatt hour per capita, which is now around 180. So what will happen then? The current, energy mix, which is very much dependent on solid biomass, by 2030, if you take a sustainable energy development pathway, the electricity will, from 3%, it goes to almost 50%. And this is clean energy developed by hydropower in the country and solar. So what will happen? So by then, by 2030, we can achieve the sustainable development goals like 7 access of modern energy to every household by 2030, sustainable energy for all goals, access to cleaner form of energy, efficiency improvement, increased share of renewable energy. So what will happen? It also have the impact on air pollution. The PM 2.5 can be reduced by 75% if we take the sustainable energy development goal. We call it policy scenario also. It is by 2030, by 2050, we can reduce almost 90% because we are going in a sustainable energy development pathway. Similarly, greenhouse gas emissions, it can be reduced by 67% in 2030, and it can be reduced by almost 76% by 2050. So, sans if you take a sustainable energy development path. So the other thing is from our analysis, it showed that the PM 2.5 concentration or air pollution, the short-lived climate pollutants, it's due to 30% only by natural emission causes. 50% is due to transboundary causes. So we took, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, this is a modeling framework, LEAP IBC, and based on the data supplied by NASA Geoskim model, we did it, and it showed that we can reduce by around 40% of this PM 2.5 concentration by 2050. And that I understand. 30% is due to natural causes, 50% due to transboundary causes. That calls for the regional cooperation. So at the end, what I want to tell is that, yes, there are regional cooperation going on. Construction of petroleum pipeline from Motihari, Bihar to Amleganj, Nepal, nearing completion. That's one of the regional cooperation that's going on right now. And Nepal Electricity Authority, the state utility, is currently importing 400 megawatt from India. And I think regional power trade, as our fellow speakers has said, that this is cross-border power trade is very, very important for the sustainable energy development of each state in the South Asia region. So that is only possible if I told you, I want to emphasize that we should not take it as a strategic commodity. We should take it as a commercial commodity. So it's mutually beneficial. So we can address the energy security, we can address the pollution abatement, and we can decrease the mitigating effects of, we can increase the mitigating effects of climate change. So that's, I want to present before you. These are some of the, issues and challenges which Nepal is facing currently, and we have to move forward in a positive, sustainable energy development for this energy security in the country, and it needs the regional cooperation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.